All right, welcome everyone. It's Chris Petri. Thanks so much for coming by. We're having a great time here. We're going to be practicing and learning about our watercolor painting techniques. So we're going to go over in a careful, methodical way 3 styles of painting. Most people that paint watercolor are going to fall under these 3 styles. You're going to find out maybe what style you work in. Maybe you already are completely aware of your style. But if you're starting out in watercolor or you haven't really thought too much about what your style actually is, we're going to kind of cover what the 3 major styles are usually that you'll see watercolor painting performed in. So you have the loose style, semi, and tight style. Again, we're going to have on camera at all times our 3 styles. So we're going to start out here with the tight style. We're going to move into the semi-loose style, so I'm going to have this on camera at all times, and the palette on cam at all times, as well as the loose style here. So we have each one covered in detail. You'll be able to see how we accomplish these. We'll share with you the brushes we use, the paper, the paints, the paint mixes, everything you need to know, A to Z, the whole enchilada, right here on this channel. Get excited. We're going to start in just a second. All right, we just saw the finished paintings, so we're going to get started with our compositions, and we're talking about style, painting styles. Some artists, they know what style they paint in. Other artists maybe don't really think about it too much if you're newer in painting. So if you're a new watercolor artist just starting out, and again, I call this series the Extreme Beginner Series because I know a lot of people are just starting out in watercolor all the time, and they'll come to my channel here. So welcome if you're brand new to watercolor. It's great to have you. And I always want to say that, even if you've been painting a long time or a couple of years or so, all of my videos tend to be really good informationals for everyone, whether you're just starting out or if you've been painting for a while or even a number of years, or if you've been painting a long time. Because I know, we all kind of go into YouTube and we follow other watercolor artists and things like this. And I do the same thing. I'm always looking around, checking out different artists and so forth, and doing Google searches and looking for paintings and kind of looking just to see what's out there. And some of the old painters like Winslow Homer and the old great masters, Wyeth and Picasso and all these great artists in history. So I kind of research a little bit of everything just to keep myself kind of visually seeing things and getting ideas. But in any case, whether you're brand new or you've been painting a while or you've been painting a long time, it doesn't matter. We'll go over some of these basic fundamental ideas in painting watercolor. This is like your style. So what is your style? How do you paint? Do you find you paint tight, loose, maybe in between loose and tight? Sometimes you mix them up. So if you're like me, I tend to paint more tight. So my style is mostly a tight style, but I do also paint loose on occasions. And again, that's because I'm just someone that I guess I tend to be, I get bored easy with things. So I like to always learn new ideas, new things. I'm always just soaking up as much as I can with new information. So that's kind of how my teaching style is on YouTube. I'm hoping you're enjoying it, and let's get started with this. So we'll just do a quick pencil drawing. And again, once we get our pencil drawing done, then we'll start getting into the nuts and bolts of our style. If it's loose, tight, in between the two, we'll see how it goes. So I'll just have my reference painting here, and I'm working with a new video camera. So I did try to create a video. Some of you might have watched the first 5 minutes or whatever. It tended to have an issue where it stopped running the video. So I always watch my videos one time just to make sure they're operating correctly on YouTube. So that's like if you ever decide you're going to be painting some watercolors on YouTube, have your own channel, whatever, you kind of once you make your video and put it on YouTube, it's good to always just watch it one time and make sure there's nothing wrong with it. If it's operating correctly. Sometimes it's just a good kind of habit to have. So in any case, let's see here. We'll start out kind of the same idea here. We'll get a little bit of a ground level mark going across, and hopefully this pencil line, my new video camera we're using, is really fantastic. It tends to pick up the pencil lines really well. So it's an upgrade for me, and I'm hoping you enjoy the upgrade of the video quality. And again, this is kind of something to notice. My painting style is similar to just drawing, whether you're or even writing. So if you can write and make notes on papers like notepads, and you can do things like that, then you can draw and paint in watercolor, because it's essentially, with the tight style, which I do use most of the time, you're going to find that that's exactly how I'm actually drawing and painting. I'm almost like hands on the paper, resting on the table, and the painting on the paper. And I'm just, as I go, my hand's always resting on the paper. The flesh part of my palm is always on the paper. And I'm just going and contour drawing around. I'm just keep referencing this over here. And then I come back up. I see the bush is over here a little bit higher than the halfway point. Maybe that's the halfway point there. So we're a little higher than that. So I'm making my shrub over here like so, and hedges. And then I keep going over here. I come over here and I say, okay, the door is a little bit in from this here. And again, my paintbrush is going to kind of operate the same way my pencil is. Once I have my paintbrush and we're working with the paints, this will be the tight style, basically. Your hand's going to be resting on the paper, and your brush is basically going to pick up your paint. You know, sometimes you'll mix a little bit of paint over here, or you'll just go directly into your paints. And then your brush touches down on the paper, and your hand rests on the paper and on your board and on your paper at all times, and you just rest your hand there, and then you just slowly move your brush and move the paint and wash around as you're going. And then when you need more paint, you lift up and grab more paint, come back over, rest your hand down on the paper, and then you're going to be going for another go over here and doing the next section. And you're just constantly working a section at a time, and you're going to be moving you're going to try to move at a decent pace so that your watercolor washes will all blend together nicely as you're going. If you're doing more of details like this here, like windows, a chimney, those areas you can do just blocks of color and let them dry, and then after that you can go over and create your washes, let's say for your walls of your house. That's how we're going to do it, but I just want to explain right out from the start here, this is the tight style, and it resembles the same as if you were actually sitting down and writing notes or a letter, or jotting down some things to do, whatever it is. You're just your hands on the paper. And then we'll just do this here. We'll just call this the same thing. Tight style. We'll do this in pencil like that. Sharpie up here. Sharpies are wearing out. Incidentally, watercolor paper is like sandpaper. It generally wears out stuff like Sharpies in no time. So I could basically wear out a Sharpie in like 2 videos, just doing a couple little small things like this, because the paper is like sandpaper and it just chews up the marker, tip of the marker. So, but no worries on that. We're going to use some pencil here instead, save a little bit of money. And we're going to keep moving along here. Sorry about that frog in my throat. I have to get one of those buttons where you push the button and it shuts off the audio. I see some people on YouTube have those. Okay, so now I'm going to start here with the door and then the window above that here. And I'm just going to kind of just keep referencing back over here like this. Okay, this is more of a contemporary looking house with square windows. And then maybe we'll add a little embellishments here. We'll do some shutters. I hope you like those. We're going to add some little more details to the facade of the house here. So we'll put in some shutters. That might look better. And why not? Let's put some shutters on the side of the doors here. I've seen that before. That looks kind of cool. Shutters on the sides of the door. And then we'll have a little light here. We'll make a little light. Like that. And we'll come up and do the roof. We'll do our chimney there. Like that. A couple of chimney pots up here, which are small rectangles. So you can see, even doing this type of a drawing, it's quite straightforward. Maybe we'll make a little bit of an addition over here. Maybe we'll make another addition over this way, and then we can just move this for a second here. I'll just lift this up a second here. I'll just make another little, we'll just move this a second here. We'll just put another section over here of the house. We'll put a little addition on the house here. Another roof over here, like that. Like so. And maybe window over here like so. A couple of shutters over here. And maybe even a little small awning over here. And a door over here, so maybe we'll have a door over there. So you can have some fun expanding things. And I think over here we're going to create a tree. So we'll just keep working on this side over here. So we're going to put a tree over here. Big old happy tree. Some limbs on it there. And then we'll put some foliage on the tree. Eventually, we're going to get to that. We're going to paint those leaves on this tree. Maybe one limb comes down like this. Maybe another one there. Okay, so we pretty much have a good pencil drawing here, a nice contour drawing. And I don't think we're not going to get really too sophisticated here with our composition, because the main thing is I just wanted to describe, again, the styles of painting. And again, we're doing the tight style on this one. We're going to come back in a few minutes. I just want to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're ready to paint. So we'll get started with our paint. We'll show you what brushes we're going to use, colors that we're going to mix. We're going to mix a little bit of colors out on our palette. But we're having a fun time here. Enjoy it. And this is a great time to just ask yourself the question, what is my style? And number two, you might say, okay, my style is tight or loose or not sure. Then, after we're done with this video, after 2 or 3 of these compositions, you'll know the 3 that I tend to use most often. I mix them all together sometimes, but I mostly paint tight, but I do use loose style occasionally. Again, I'm going to keep explaining it as we go, but this is the first one, tight style. This is the real, if you're starting out in watercolor, this is the one you'd want to key in on and really do. Work on this style first for, a couple years probably. I'm just being honest. And then once you have a couple years of working in the tight style, then you can start loosening up a little more, because you're going to have a little more knowledge with like mixing paints and colors and how to work with the washes, the dry times of the washes. Watercolor is a lot of detail, but each time you go in and do a painting and a composition like this, you learn something new. So that's why I liked watercolor so much, incidentally. It was always a learning process. Every time I picked up my brushes and my pencil, either drawing, learning how to draw constantly, and then learning how to paint all the time, and just learning how to work with the washes. And there's all different kinds of things. You buy new paper, it acts differently. You got to learn that, a little bit about that. Sometimes you pick up a new brush, you have to learn how to use a different style of brush. Maybe we're going to start out with a round brush, which is great. This one comes with the prang set, so if you're starting out, perfect set, oval 16 set. It comes with a brush, a nice detail brush, which we can use, and we're going to use this brush for this entire painting. And you just need a spritzer bottle like this with fresh, clean water. You spritz your paints to start out with. Just a little bit of water on these paints, and it does wonders. And that's all you need to do. And what's great about this watercolor set is it's perfect for beginners, because you don't have to worry about any cleanups or any kind of covering it. You work with your paint just like this. At the end of the day or the end of the session, you can leave your paint set like this, come back a week later, a day later, a month later, a week later, whatever it is. You just do the same thing. You open it up and you do some spritzing to moisten the paints, and you're ready to paint again. So there's no other maintenance or anything like that with this. It's just spritz it and paint. Close it up. Next time you paint, doesn't matter how long it is. Again, week, month, 2 days, 1 day, hour later, you open it back up, spritz it, and you're ready to paint again. And you just have to worry about spritzing your paint mixing area here, and you clean it up with paper towels. And we're going to do that. So you'll see everything, how it all works as we go. But I'd like to just mention these things right in the beginning so that you kind of get a feel for what we're doing here. And especially if you're just starting out. Again, if you're just starting, you're at the right place at the right time if you're painting watercolor. And we're going to keep going here and stacking all of our information here so that you're going to be learning a lot of things as we go. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a great idea of what style you might be painting in, or if you're just starting out, what style you might want to try first. And again, I always recommend the tight style first for at least a year or two. But it's up to you. You're the artist. You'll figure these things out just like I did. And we're going to get started in a second or two. Just want to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, so we're getting back to the painting portion of this first composition we're doing, one of three. And what I'll do is I'll trim this down a little bit so it fits a little better with our working area here. So I'm going to find some scissors here. We'll just trim this down. So I'll just make this smaller for us. Okay, I'll trim this down a little bit over here. All right, so that's a little better. Now we have a little more working room here. All right, yeah, perfect. All right, looks good. A little better fit there for the video screen. And I'll just tape this down with a little bit of Scotch tape. Okay, now we're going to get into the painting. And what I'll do is I always have fresh, clean water. So I use fresh, clean water in this rubberized paint watercolor water container. These are fantastic. Nice and quiet, too, for videos. I remember I used to use a metal palette, and every time I would tap on it, it would make an annoying noise. So I think people found that annoying. So I'm glad everyone is happy with this. This is better, quieter. And so we have that over here to the right. So I keep my water container on the right over here like this. Then sometimes I will use, you could use a sponge next to your water container like that. You rinse off your brush, you maybe tap a little water off on your sponge, and then you can come over and pick up your paints, and you can work on the process that way. Rinse off brush, tap on a sponge or a paper towel. You could put a couple paper towels down, or some tissues. You could do that. A lot of times I actually just use tissues. I hold the tissue in my left hand like this, rinse off my brush, tap a little bit on the tissue, and then come over and pick up my paints like that. So, but I would use a sponge if I'm using, or if I'm creating a larger painting. So if you're going to paint a larger painting than this, you know, in the near future, you know, a sponge might be a good idea to think about for your water container, next to your water container. But that's a good setup to have. That's my setup for my water container. And then from that point, we just have this palette, our Prang Oval 16 palette. And then from here, we're going to just start out and let's create the darks first. And this is what, you know, we call this the alla prima method. And in my book below, I have my book. You can always check out my book. I cover in great detail the alla prima method and the glazing technique. So those two methods and techniques, you can work interchangeably with them, but you can use them separately too. So here we're going to use the alla prima technique, which is we're just going to go in and paint this whole painting at one time. Glazing technique's a little different. We'll do that on the last composition. We'll show you how to do the glazing technique on the final painting we do. But on this one here, alla prima, we're going in everything one time. I'll have some brown. We're going to do the tree trunk here, so we'll just take some brown. Now, maybe we'll add a touch of green to the brown, just to maybe have a little bit of that earthiness to it, the green. And then, you know, sometimes the trees will pick up that little bit of color from the grass and the other leaves and things. And also, too, a little bit of coolness we could add a little bit of that blue there, too, just to have a little bit of that cool the interchange of the coolness and the brown. And then another thing we can do is add some blue and purple to maybe make it a little darker up here. So we'll give ourselves a little bit of a darker mix here. So that's a real dark brown. And how do you get a really dark brown? Is simple. You just add some purple and blue, and you can see how dark these colors are here that we have. So these are blues and purples right here. And there's even black here. We can even add a touch of black. And that can get us that great dark that we need for the tree trunk, like this, and the limbs. So again, the first thing I do is I start out, and I just mentioned this quickly. If you're right-handed, you're going to start on the left sections of your painting and work across this way. This way you don't lean into your paint when you're painting in this method, which is the tight style, and also alla prima, of course. But again, you're right-handed, you're painting over here on the left like this. Like this, and then working this way. If you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, you'd start over here and start over here on the roof over here. Whatever darks are over here, you work over here. Or you could start here on the tree if you're left-handed, but then you'd let that dry 100% so that you wouldn't by accident lean your hand into it when you're painting the rest of the painting. So that's the only thing when you're working with watercolor. You always have to be aware of what paint you've put onto the paper and if it's dry or not. So you want to kind of make sure you keep a track of that. So we're just going to simply put our tree trunk in here and our limbs, and again, hands resting on the paper. It's almost as if I'm doing, writing a note or writing a check or anything like that. I'm just hand on the paper, and I'm just carefully moving the brush to add in my washes right where these sketch lines and contour lines we created, like this. And you could even go into the top of the roof a little bit here, like this, and you put a couple. You can improv and add a few little extra limbs if you want, like this. No big deal. And like this. A couple of, like that. And that's it. Perfect. Look at how good that looks. Good work. And now we are going to maybe change from this here. We have this. We could do this just for practice, so let's do that. Let's just say the windows and doors are a little darker. So we're going to create our windows here. And windows tend to have the color of the sky in them and the color of the leaves of the trees in the area. If there's no trees, you probably wouldn't have any green reflections in these glass windows, but we're going to have sky wash and greens in our windows. So why not? Just let's put it in there. Like that. And again, we're changing up a little bit from here. We're using a little bit of a different color, a little more blue. You can change, dab a little bit of blue in there. You can always, but you can see how tight this technique is, right? My hand's always resting on the paper here. I'm not really doing anything other than keeping a nice stable hand and just controlling my brush strokes and where I'm placing the paint. Basically, you're placing paint at this point. Especially when you get that first wash in, then you can place some darks in strategic locations. Like usually it's always darker right under the top of the window because there's a little bit of an indentation in the window, and that catches and makes the light throw a shadow right up there. So right away when we paint windows, we always know it's going to be a little darker up there like that. All right, that looks fun. Then here for the door, we could say, let's make the door solid. We'll go with maybe a little more color. So maybe we're going to do, something a little bit more interesting here. We'll do a little bit of a red color for our door here. Why not? We can change from this. We don't have to. That's the thing with watercolor too. That's fun. You can just change your colors around. If you want to paint a painting one way, and then, like if you wanted to paint this painting 3 or 4 times, you could change the color of the facade. You could make it brick or stone or stucco like this one here. You can do a little bit of yellow here. So you have an opportunity. And again, the tight style here is hand resting on the paper and just carefully placing the paint. And we'll get a little bit of that dark under the top of the door, like that. And let's come over here and we'll create this window here. Same idea with the green and the blue. Again, hand resting on the paper. You could leave a little bit of white paper in the window too. A little bit of a dark shadow underneath the underside here. Okay, perfect. All right, now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to keep painting. We're going to create the roof color, place the roof paint on for the shingles of the roof. I'm just doing a little bit of grass here, like that. You can Spice up a few spots with a brighter green if you want. Like that. Okay, so let's take a quick break for just 5 minutes, and we'll come back. We'll work on the roof and the shrubs over here. I think we'll let that dry, and we'll come back for the final and do the stucco paint. Or, you know, we could use, again, you can paint anything you want as far as the color of your building, of your house. You can paint your house a blue, a yellow, a gold, whatever color you like. You can change around the color schemes, but if you stick with what we're using here, that's fine. That'll be the best game plan. This way you kind of have everything thought out for you, and you don't have to worry. You can focus in on the working with that really good, stable brush work. Your hands on the paper at all times. You're just placing your paint with your brush into these areas that you're interested in painting, right? The windows, the door, the tree trunks, and the limbs. Once you have that, then we can move on to another section of the painting. We can also, this helps if we let this dry. That's why we can take a break. You could use a blow dryer to blow dry these areas right now off so that they're 100% dry. And then when you go back over and start painting other washes, it's not going to like mingle into these other sections here and start to awkwardly get blotchy looking with the colors and the washes of your watercolor. All right, so let's come back in a second and we'll pick right up again. Okay, so we're going to come back here and get started. Let's work on the roof next. So we're going to use the same color here. We have like an orangey red, like that. A little bit of brown mixed in there. And then we're going to have a touch of blue. We'll put that over here, just so we have some warm and cool all the time. So it's always good to try to keep your colors modulating with warm and cool. And again, we're going to go right across here like so, hands resting on the paper at all times, and I'm just sliding my brush, placing the paint. Not so much painting like I would be painting a wall or a fence or anything like that. I'm just really picking up the paint and then just placing it into the painting like this. Pick up a little bit of the cool color and just strategically put it into this wash like that, going back over it again quickly, though I don't want to wait too long. One thing you'll always learn about watercolors, you kind of have to get sections done at a time and not wait too much. Although you could wait till it dries 100% and then add some of your blue back into there after it dries, but it tends to work best with watercolor if you can kind of just get the wash done the first time and then have it be complete like that. Okay, and I can still infuse a little bit of orange and red into this. A little more red, like that. I think that looks good. We'll do the chimney once this dries, the roof washes. Best to let that dry. The roof shingles like that. All right, look how good that looks. Now, we can come over here. We'll do this roof next. We're going to keep it the same. So that orange with brown, red, orange, brown. Again, hands resting on the paper at all times, just like I'm writing a note or writing a check or signing a check or like something like that. Same thing, hands on the paper, resting on the paper, keeps that brush really stable. And then we put in some blue into that mix, and then quickly we can come over and get a little bit of red too and add some red into that mix. So we have a nice variation of colors, and we're placing the paint basically. And yes, I am moving the brush side to side sometimes, or sometimes up or down. So sometimes up like this, sometimes down like this, sometimes over here like so. We're doing more parallel strokes, and I cover that in my book as well, how to practice the tight method, the tight style of painting, and the different brush strokes and exercises you can do to build up your skills with your brush. And then we have an awning over here. We could say that this awning might be roof shingles, actually, like that. All right, this is looking good. We could certainly go in and do this tree over here, this bush. I'll mix right in with the colors that we have mixed already for the tree trunk. Take some of that green, mix in that green with a little bit of the color that we mixed for the tree trunk, which was blue, blue and purple, brown, and some red. But the main thing is, if you just look in your, this is my own kind of idea on mixing colors, is if you have a palette like this where it's white, you can see the color right there. So whenever you're mixing your paints and you want to make more of an interesting color mix, all you're doing is looking over here and saying, okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's a really, like a nice warm green, like an olivey green. And then you can come over here and just get that in there, and you kind of already know it looks good. It's an olive green over here. And you know, you can make it, you can put some shadows underneath the shrub in a second. We'll do that. So here the shrub's a little bit lighter, olivey green. Then we can add some purple. Maybe right here we'll add some purple and blue, maybe, like so. And we'll make a little bit of a shadow color under here, like so, for the bottom of the shrub. Maybe there's a little bit of a shadow on the ground too, like so. And we'll just kind of, in our own mind, we'll make a note that we'll say the light is sort of coming from over here. And this would be like a spotlight like this. So the light's coming from here. Therefore, we have a little bit of a shadow on this side over here of the shrubs there. And that'll help us too if we know the light's coming from this direction here, like the sunlight. We'll be able to put some more shadows in here to make this a little more interesting looking, this house, the scene of the house here. So, all right, we're working really nicely here. Let's work on some of the foliage of the tree here. Now, this is the only time I'm not going to use the tight style. Now I'm going to pick up my brush and hold it like this, kind of like the OK, like this. And I'm just going to do some circular patterns and a little bit of the green here and there, but not everywhere. We don't want a big blotch of green. We want to leave it light, like so. So I pick up some of that, like this. And does that make sense to keep the tree looking nice and light like that, right? You can even make it look a little more, not so much like a round, probably would look good sort of looking like cotton candy. You know how cotton candy kind of has like a wispy kind of look to it? That's how the trees would want to be looking. You wouldn't want to just have it like a round shape, like just a round. It's kind of nice to have it like this, and then maybe over here a little bit of like that, maybe some over here like so. So I think that looks good. And of course it doesn't. It's fine to work your greens into your roof area so that you have a little bit of the tree overhanging onto the roof a little tiny bit. And then you can always pick up a little bit of the darker mix. That was blue and a little bit of purple, and then a little bit of the brown and red from the tree trunk color that we mixed for the tree trunk. We can just leave extra on the palette and then go back in and use that to darken up some shadow colors. Like you can see here, we're using kind of like a green mixed with that shadow color or the tree trunk color, so you can actually it's best to use the same colors in your palette all the time, like to repurpose the colors you're using, because it'll all blend together and harmonize together, the colors. And I talk about that in a lot of my videos, you'll see. So I mention a lot of these details and little tidbits of information all the time in my videos, so that I'm always mentioning it. So you're always kind of like, the first time you watch this video, you're not going to get everything. You won't be able to remember everything unless you were to slow down the video and do like a transcript of it. So if you're not going to do that, then you're just watching all the videos. You're subscribing down below, and then every week we get together, you're just hearing the same things, new things, same things, repetition. Repetition's the mother of skill. So you will your skills will improve as you're repeating things over and over. And I think that is the key. Coming back and meeting up with us here every week, or as much as you can. I know everyone's busy, so whenever we can, we get together. And I think right now, we can always make a decision, like what color would we like to make the shutters here. I'm trying to think of a good color to use. I think I'm going to leave the white of the house. I'm going to leave the white. And then I think we'll put some shutters on here with maybe, I'm going to go with something that matches the roof, I think. So I'm going to go with the red and orange color for the shutters. Maybe a little bit of brown in there too. Maybe some green and blue. I think I changed my mind here. Let's go with some green and blue. And again, the tight style, my hands again resting on the paper, and I can just easily take this brush and move it once like that, once like this. Here I might go once and then move my hand a little bit and finish that brush stroke down like that. Same thing here, halfway, lift up my hand, move my hand back a little bit, and reposition and come down and finish that brush stroke there like that. And then we'll do one more over here, two more over here, shutters over here. And voila, look at that. We have everything almost complete. What else do we have here? The chimney. Let's do the chimney. We're going to use a clay color. So that's brown and orange. Okay. Like that. I might make it a little bit lighter over here on the right side, where the light's shining this way. And then the chimney pots, I'll make those darker so they sort of stand out like that. Maybe an old TV antenna over here. Maybe someone forgot to take off their TV antenna. And then now we talked about shadows. Let's do some shadowing since we're wrapping up here. We're going to, for our first composition, purple, blue, makes a perfect shadowy color. And then maybe a little bit of brown in there just to darken it a little more. And we'll roll our brush around and get a nice point on the brush like that. You can see how pointy that is. And we'll just do some shadowing. So if the light's coming from this direction, we'll just put a little bit indication of some shadowing like this. Over there's the chimney. There's a slight shadow over here where the antenna is. Where else will we have shadows? On this side of the tree, it might be a little darker. It's going to be some shadowing. There's going to be some shadowing here under the tree, but I'm going to wait till we do a few more over here. So over here, we're going to go with some shadowing under the windows. the window sills, and also a little bit of shadowing under the window sills. Okay, there's some shadowing here for the house. A little bit of the purple and blue. I rinse off my brush, I get some purplish colors. Then I add some more water to this, make it lighter. And that'll be the tree. I just dab a little bit for the shadows of the tree, like that. Shadows of the house here. And there's more shadows over here by the shrubs. So I'm just going to put a little bit of indications of shadows. Also, there's some shadows under here, under the eave of the roof. Just like that. We try to keep this one even, because the roof overhang is straight. Like that. We can make it a little bit darker, maybe a little bit of orange in there. Up here. Blue, orange, purple. Make it darker up there like that. Then it slowly gets a little bit lighter. Same thing over here, a darker shadow under here. And you can kind of see how that you can blot up a little bit with your tissue to soften up a couple areas. And the shadows will lighten up. They'll lighten up for sure. Whenever you put paint on, you always remember it lightens up with watercolor quite a bit. That would be different than like oil paint. Oil paint, you put it on and it's going to stay that same color and that same tonal value, that same lightness or darkness. With watercolor, when you put your paints and your washes on the paper, they're going to lighten up as they dry. So maybe an hour after you paint your watercolor painting, you're going to notice that it's going to be lighter. The colors will be lighter, not as dark. And then we have our chimney there. And again, some more shadowing under the tree foliage. But you have it there. You see, we've kept our our tight style going. Maybe at the end here we've done a little more loose, kind of dabbing on some paint here and there. Our shadow's pretty much tight though. I've kept my hand on the paper and the board and I got my shadow lines in like so. And that's really the fun of it. The tight style really gives you some really crisp, nice details. You can really paint really detailed paintings like this. Crisp lines, accurate washes, and if you're letting things dry as you go so that you don't get too much of the blotchy kind of, colors mixing and running into each other and like becoming kind of blended together, you're fine. You can use a blow dryer to blow dry a certain section. You might paint the windows and the doors, and then you use a blow dryer, dry it off a little bit, make sure it's really good and dry, and then you can go back over and start working on your next section. Let's say the roof was next after that. So you can work in sections, take your time, and we're going to have fun. Now we're going to go next to the semi-loose style. We're going to show you how we're going to do a little looser painting here, semi-loose, and then finally, again, the loose style, which is just the next level up of loosening up and using more water, more paint, less accuracy, more free-flowing fun with the brush and the paints. So we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back from our break, we'll break this down and we'll put our next painting up. Okay, let's break down this setup here and we'll move on to our next. So I'm just going to lift up my original painting, and then I'll lift this up. Now what's really nice about this, if we had created like a sky wash and more ground washes, you'd see a nice, really nice border around the painting. But we kept it more just a quick composition. We didn't get too involved with too many washes, which is how we want to do it. We want to keep these compositions simple, so we're getting the ideas of accomplishing the task of figuring out how each style works. So now we'll take this and set it over here. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to trim this one down, and we're going to put some more paper on. We'll get another fresh sheet of paper. So we'll put our new sheet of paper right here, and then what we'll do is we'll tape it, again with Scotch tape. And the reason is I just wanted to show you that it's really great if you can just always tape down your painting, the border of your painting, even your compositions and your practice work. If you always do that, you'll always have a good result with when you peel the tape up. You're going to have like a natural frame around it, which really looks good. Kind of just makes everything look really nice, having a frame and a border around it. So now we have this taped down. And again, I would use really good, this is actually Scotch brand, contractor's grade tape. It works really excellent. And this is like 3/4 to like 1 inch, I think. It's made by 3M. And also, too, this works great. You can get this in any of the big box stores, too. The frog tape. And this is really good. The green frog tape is fantastic. It won't tear up your paper at all. And it's what professional painters use when they're painting around trim, around windows, doors, inside interior of buildings, houses, commercial work. They tape things with the tape, and it just lifts up real easy and quick. And it works great for oil paint or watercolor painting. And also, they make other, I think this is maybe, yeah, this is the blue frog tape. And it's got a little more tackiness to it. It's like a little bit more sticky than the green, but it still works the same way. It's great. You can lift it right up off your paintings. Won't rip your paper to shreds when you lift it up. Okay, so now let's take our semi-loose painting. I'm just going to trim this down so we have the same idea of before. Maybe like that might work fine. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll trim it down a little more. Okay, like that. Okay, and then this one will tape down as well so it doesn't move around. And then we're all set up. We have that there. And then we'll use our mechanical pencil again. And this is a number 7, Pentel 120A3, 0.7 millimeter. This is really a fantastic pencil, retractable pencil. And I use this all the time. We're going to create our semi-loose technique here. We're going to do a tree here. We'll do a larger tree here. So I'm just carefully contour drawing. I'm just looking at the tree back and forth, like I'm just looking at the tree. My eyes are watching my pencil and then looking here and then looking back. And I can improvise a little bit. I don't have to follow everything to the exact detail. I can do a few more or less. Branches or limbs, it's up to me. It's up to you. And then we'll do another smaller tree here. That looks pretty good. All right, so we have a start here. We were going to create the pencil drawing first. And that should be fine. And then you can do a very light pencil line of maybe some ideas of the foliage of the tree. Just some outlines. Again, we would rather have it kind of undulating the outer edges of the tree versus just drawing like a round kind of like cauliflower or broccoli kind of look to it. So I think that's really important with trees. But you would always look at the natural, like you could take pictures when you're out of different trees you like and nearby where you live. You could research photos online for different types of trees and practice some different, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll have a video that will create some different trees. There's so many different kinds and species, so it's kind of really fun to, but this is just maybe like a oak tree or something, maple tree. All right, so that's good. We're going to take a quick break, and again with this, the semi-loose style, we're not going to get too detailed as far as the paint washes. We're going to have more of a fun, loose time with the paint and the brush strokes. And we're going to keep this like a nice autumn kind of look to it. Like it's kind of the autumn time. Beautiful fall colors, autumn colors, reds, oranges, some greens in there, purples, blue, kind of a mixture of all the colors. And we'll get in the sky washes too. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, we're going to start in a second. I'm just going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, now we're moving along here. Let's start with, again, our trunk of the tree and tree limbs and branches to accomplish this composition. And we're, again, talking about a semi-loose technique now. So we're going to actually cover that here right now. And we'll take some spritzer bottle here, some fresh clean water in our spritzer bottle. I took about an hour break, so these need some little bit of spritzing, and then that livens them up really good right away. Blue, purple, brown, and then some green and some red. That looks pretty good. Maybe some orange. And then some blue too for some warm and cool. And then I'm just going to grab that paint. Now we're talking about, I think a good way, I'm going to do a quick, let's see what I have here. Okay, what I have here is just a book, a simple book here. I just want to mention that when we talked about the tight style, that's again more or less your hand. I'm showing it on a side view, your hand resting on the paper like this. I'll take some paper here. So your hand is on the watercolor paper like this, resting, and you're painting like that. And then now when we're working into the semi-loose, you're going to kind of be lifting your hand off the paper, off your working board and your paper or your sketchbook, however you're working with your watercolor paper and your painting process. You're going to have, again, you're going to be lifting up your hand a little more and then maybe moving up your hand on the brush a little more. And then you're going to have a little more freedom. And maybe you're going to have your pinky, a couple of your fingers, just as you're lifting up your hand and you're getting to that more semi-loose technique and style, then you're going to be going a little quicker and getting faster and more, loose brush strokes as you go. And then on the final loose style, you're going to be, I'll just even We're going to be using more of the mop brush. And then with that, your hand's going to be far up on the brush like this, and your paper is going to be here, and you're going to be working with more or less your arm and your shoulder, and your brush like this. You're holding your mop brush high up like this on the next one after this one. So this is the semi-loose. Then when we get to the loose painting, again, you're going to be using a mop brush. Now we have a mop brush we introduced into the mix, and then you're going to be more or less, you're working with more or less your arm and your shoulder and holding your brush high up, and you're not really using your hand anymore on the paper. You're lifting up, and then you're using larger. This is really good for larger paintings. If you're working in a larger format, you can really, that's when the loose style of painting is really beneficial. If you're working on a large sheet of paper, like a 18 by 24 inch watercolor painting, you can cover a lot of ground quickly with a large mop brush, and you can have a really loose look, like this, by just using the brush like this and getting really, really nice brush strokes like that, very loose. So that's kind of like the three methods, kind of seeing it from the side view, right? So you're kind of making a transition from the tight, where your hand's resting on the paper, semi-loose, you're kind of getting higher up and, maybe doing larger movements. And then, of course, the final very loose style is you're holding your brush high up like this on the brush handle, and you're just doing larger strokes and bigger washes and things like that. So that's kind of I just want you to see the sort of the profile of the paper, and how, the transition from hand resting on paper to lifting up a little bit more, and then finally, moving your hand far back on the brush handle, and then, handling the brush strokes much more, loosely and with larger brush strokes and more water and more paint. Okay, so we'll continue with the wash here, and we'll just get and again, now we're sort of going to lift up, and maybe we're going to start getting some more quicker brush strokes like this. We're, again, lifting up, starting to move our hand off the paper, and maybe stabilizing a little bit with our pinky or a couple fingers with our brush hand. And that's kind of breaking into the semi-loose style, where you're not completely working without some stabilization with your right hand or your left hand if you're lefty, like that. And we can come back in and get a little more paint. And we'll do our smaller tree here. All right, looks good. And we'll do the same thing too. We'll just make a quick notation on our watercolor paper. Where is our light coming from? We'll do the same thing. We'll have our light coming from this area here. We make our spotlight here, our light source, a light bulb, and some light insignia. So that's our light icon of direction of light. And you can move it around, put this side, have the light coming this way, directly overhead, shining down straight. That's up to you how you want to work your lighting, but usually you'll be working with some subject matter, usually some material, like a photograph, or maybe you're going to be painting outdoors, or from another painting from a book, another watercolor book, and so forth. So now we're ready to get some green and some brown, and we'll make an olive type green here. Maybe some fall colors. We'll add some red and orange and yellow. We'll just make some fall colors up here. A little bit of blue and some green. So I'll make my blues and greens over here, sort of like this. And then the fall colors right within here. Let's try it out. We'll take our brush again, in a little more of a looser fashion, holding our brush like this. And we're going to again do those circular fashion brush strokes like this. You can do some upstrokes like this, some circular strokes like this. You can work both of the trees at the same time, the foliage and the trees at the same time. Then we can talk about how we mix the colors in, and we also try to keep the tree looking non-symmetrical. So we're not looking to have like a head of broccoli or cauliflower. We want to have an asymmetrical kind of look to some splashing. I took a little bit of the brown, like this, for some shadowing. A little bit of purple, like this, purple, for some shadowing underneath the leaves of the trees. Like this, just some shadowing in there. Then we can go back in and pick up our fall colors. Drop in a little bit of splashing here. You can even tap too. Tap on your paper a little bit just to move some paint around a little bit like that. Maybe some more green. Some of that nice lively green. So we have fall colors like this. Maybe a little bit of grass here. A little bit of purple shadowing here for the tree. Splashing for some shadows. Purple colors like that for shadowing. A little more green grass here. Again, loosely, I'm holding my brush loosely like this and just dragging it across the paper. It's nice to have rough paper. If you're using rough paper when you're doing landscapes like this and trees, it's going to help tremendously. Versus using like more of a smooth paper. You can get more textures with rough paper. You can kind of see how we got a really nice look here. More of a looser style. And then we'll just take some more, I'm going to empty my water in my water bucket, pour in some fresh clean water. And then this way I can wet the sky a little bit up here. So now we're going to do again, taking my brush and just holding my brush like this and just adding a little bit of fresh clean water up here to the top of the sky. And then maybe now we can lift this up and we'll just sort of, we can finish up like this and just have the full paper here. I'll put some clean, fresh, clean, crystal clear water just in the top portion of the sky here, just a little bit, just to get some color going for the blue sky. So now we'll go in, get some blue down here. Then we'll take some orange to gray down that blue a little bit. And then we'll just go right across here and just touch that to the sky. And once you wet the paper, this is wet and wet painting, where you just touch the color to the sky. Look how good that looks, and it's doing all the work for you. You don't have to worry about working too hard to get your clouds. Your clouds are already in there as you just touch the paint down onto the already pre-moistened paper. Look how good that looks. Just like that. Maybe we could take a little bit of the golden color here, just to put up in the sky a little bit, kind of blend it in so the colors kind of blend together, the sky and the tree colors, the fall colors. You can blot up a little bit of paint with a tissue sometimes to make a few clouds like that. A couple of cloud shapes. And maybe in the far distance, some really fine clouds like this. Very, very thin Clouds in the distance, like that. Soften them up with a little bit of water. Damp brush, like that. If you smudge something by accident, no problem. Dip your paper towel or tissue in some water, and then just kind of gently scrub, and you can take that right off like that. All right, so that's the semi-loose style of painting. Again, I'll just put it up here. And next we're going to work on the loose painting style. We're going to have a lot of fun with that too. We'll just take a quick break, and then we'll get started with that. We'll do a contour drawing first, a sketch first, and then we'll do the painting on the last composition that we're going to do. So I'm glad you're here. Happy you're really working with me, and we've done a lot of work so far, and we've just got one more to go. I'm hoping you'll push through this, and you can always break this video down into parts if you want. So if you were really busy and stretched for time, maybe you watch one or two of these like now, and then maybe you wait till the next day, and then you can do the final one, the loose style. You know, try to work it into your schedule as best you can. I know everyone's kind of busy and so forth. So, but if you can do all three at one time on this video and keep working on through, that's great. That'll be actually perfect, because you can kind of see each progression as it goes, and kind of like all at one time as we work through the this video. In any case, we'll be right back, and we'll start our third composition, loose style painting. All right, we're going to work into our loose style next, but I just wanted to mention too, you can always turn your paintings into something more like in keeping with maybe some holidays or different things like that. Like here in America, we're going to have Halloween soon in autumn, and so you can also take a painting like this, and then you can just, you know, maybe have some pumpkins like under the tree here, like so. So you can do some fun stuff like this and turn it into like a you know, maybe like a card or something like that for Happy Halloween or something. You know, you can do really fun stuff like this, and just add a few things like that. Just a couple small indications of some pumpkins here underneath, like this. Just like this. A little bit of shadowing underneath them, like that. And that's all. And you can do maybe, you know, something even more interesting, but, you know, that's just kind of something you can do to add to a composition like this. And it's, of course, because of autumn in the United States, we do celebrate Halloween. That's our fun holiday we have every year around autumn time, when autumn is sort of with us for the year as we're breaking into winter time, before winter time. And then we'll just take our paintings, and we'll set up our next bit of paper, and we'll set this down here, and again we'll try to we'll set that there. And again, if you can you know what we'll probably do is I think I'll set this one up with the artist tape, and this way you can kind of see how the painting will look once we're completed with it. We'll pull up the tape. So what I do is I get the tape on there, maybe half of the tape on the watercolor paper, half on the table, like so. All four sides. You can get more creative, make the base larger with a wider strip of tape on the bottom, especially if you're going to do some occasional cards, something like that. All you got to do is just take an extra pass of tape like this. We'll do it here, like this. You do an extra bit of tape down here, and then you can put a message down here with some markers or a pencil or pens, whatever. And then you just And then you can, of course, we're working on camera here, so I usually neaten up my tape a little bit more, but we'll work with this. This is fine. And what do we have here next? We're going to have, we'll put our, so right here we could put this here. Okay, this is the loose style. Again, we're going to have this here. I'll tape this down here like so, just for the time being. Once we get the drawing done and we start painting, we might lift this up and move it over a little more. But we kind of have the idea now here. We have the general street scene. We make our street about maybe 1/4 of the way up the sheet of paper. So about 1/4 up here, we have our street level. You can use, of course, a ruler if you want. That sometimes is really good to use. A straight edge if you're making something like a street or a boardwalk or something like that, where you're going to kind of need more of a straighter line. But that's pretty good. I put that there with my ruler. And then we're going to have trees. So this is going to be like a street scene and some trees along the buildings. And we have a clock tower here. So I'm going to take this and then we'll make the clock tower here. And I'm going to contour draw this. I'm just going to keep looking back and forth at this painting and my drawing and just try to see if I can get it to look as best I can, close as possible, like that. And then we have the clock here. And then maybe some shadow under here. I might just sketch in some shadow just to remember to take some shadow color. And we'll do the same thing. We'll use our Sharpie and just put our light. We'll do the same thing. Light source is sort of coming from this direction this way. And of course we have the trees here along the sidewalk and road. It could be a plaza. Maybe people are moving around. It's maybe a lunchtime, or maybe there's a train station nearby. You can kind of have little ideas in your mind, stories in your mind when you're painting paintings, especially if you're improvising. I'm improvising right now, improvising. Really creating this just for, to do for an example here for our exercise. I'm not really copying from a photograph or anything like that. And then here we're going to have some buildings over here. So I'll make this building over here. We'll have some windows there. So maybe we'll see a little bit of the windows there through the trees. And then maybe the same thing over here. We'll have another building over here. Kind of barely visible through the trees, but then we'll lift up the paper at a later time. Like as we're working on this painting, then we'll lift up the paper and we'll finish this side of the painting. But we don't have to do that right now. We can start over here in this section. It's not going to be critical to have everything completed over here on the right side. Now over here we're going to put a figure in the painting. So we're thinking the figure is just a little bit above the street level here. So we'll take that first figure and we'll just draw in a head, right, like an oval or an egg shape. And this person is maybe a business person, a businessman. He's got his suit on here maybe, and he's walking in the into the scene, walking toward the city area here, the plaza over here. And then maybe another figure we'll try to keep the heads about the same level. So here the next figure's smaller, and like this, and we'll just have maybe a female figure like this, kind of like a carrot, kind of the carrot shape really, wider shoulders up top, and then the figure slims down with the legs, sort of like that. Head there. You can have maybe an arm with like a purse or some shopping, and then we can have that there. And then we have maybe one more figure too as well, a third figure or fourth figure. So we'll do maybe another 2 over here. So we'll have another figure over here, smaller yet, like this, like so. And maybe another person next to that person there. Okay, so these are a little bit not as detailed, right? So this is a little more detailed here, and then as the figures go further into the distance here, we're just going to make them less detailed because it's kind of getting into the distance and it gets a little bit blurry. We don't see things in the distance with a lot of detail. Something closer to us right up here, if we're like viewing this as if we're standing here in the scene, we'd see more details where the figure is here. And then as the figures and people are further in the distance, you just see more fuzzy, more kind of misty, fuzzy looking figures, not too much detail because our eyesight doesn't pick up all the details at far distances. So we're going to just take that into consideration. And then pretty much we have everything else we need here. We have the trees along the city scene. We have the roadway here. We have our figures. We have some buildings. We're going to add more buildings over here once we lift this up, this part of the painting up. We want to start over here, though, and just get a good start on this painting. All right, so now what I will do is, since we're going to do more wet washes, we're going to do a loose style, of course, and so what we want to do is move this to the side just for the time being. We're going to put this back in a second or two. But now we're going to clean up our palette just a little bit. I want to start out with fresh clean palette. So I'm going to dip my a paper towel into my water container with clear water, clean water, and just do a quick clean up of my palette, get up all those colors we used before, and we'll start with fresh new colors. And then I come back with a dry paper towel once I get that first bit of water and paper towel on there. I come back with a dry paper towel, and there we go. Perfect. We got a clean palette to work with now. And we're going to take our fresh, clean water now that we have in the water bucket. And we're going to introduce again our newer brush, which is like a mop brush here. It's a beautiful mop brush. This I get from my Alvaro Castañet's website. I buy all my mop brushes from his site as well as my needlepoint brushes. So you'll see me use needlepoint brushes all the time on my channel. And I usually use the number 8 and number 10 needlepoint brushes by Alvaro Castañet. And then this is the mop brushes he has. And I have all of his mop brushes. He probably has about a dozen different sizes of mop brushes. And I have them all because sometimes I paint very large paintings. So I'm trying to think if I have anything here. So this one here I use for very large paintings. This is a number 6 mop brush. But for this size painting, this is fine. This is a number 0. So this is a number 0 mop brush, and then this is the number 6, you can see. And there's larger brushes than this, and I have them in my my studio here. And so we're going to take our water, fresh clean water, and we're going to make some gold, orange, and kind of gold together to make like a yellow ochre with a little bit of brown. A little bit of a wash like that. And we're going to do a light wash first. This is called the glazing technique, glazing method. What that is a light wash over the entire surface of your paper first, and then we let that dry 100%. And then after that, we come over the top of it once it's dry, 100%, our darker colors, our darker washes. So I'm going to have that there. Then we're going to have the sky color here with a little bit of brown in the sky, in the blue there. So I'll use my 2 blues here. This is kind of like a French ultramarine blue. And this is like a cerulean blue. So I mix a little of those two together. Maybe a touch of red to neutralize it just a little bit. Like that. And there we go. We have a sky color and we have a golden color too for the color of light and the color of autumn with the autumn leaves and things like this. So I'm going to start out with lots of water here, light wash, lots of water, not that much paint, mostly water, but definitely. And I'm just going to go over this whole like this. Can you see how I added just a lot of water on this here? And I go right across the whole paper. Then I come up here and get some blue up here for the sky wash. And again, I'm holding the brush at the very top, and I'm using mostly my arm and my shoulder, and I'm standing, of course, at my table here. And so I'm just able to get all of these washes on real quickly, very easily. And then we're going to do more here for the roadway. And you can just use the mop brush the mop brush holds tons of water and paint, so you can really cover the whole entire paper very quickly, which is great. This way you can have all your colors mixing really nicely, like we have here. And then we're all set. That's our first wash. We have to let this dry 100%. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, let this dry 100%. Once that's done, you can use a blow dryer if you like to, or you can let it dry naturally for maybe an hour or two. Once it's completely dry and you touch it and it's not moist or wet or damp, then we'll start on our next wash, which is our darker washes on top of this. Okay, let's let this dry and we'll come right back. All right, so now the paper is 100% dry. I did use a blow dryer, so everything is 100%. And we have our mop brush again. We're going to go in, get our fresh, clean water. Now we're going to go in with some fall colors again. Orange, greens, yellows, oranges, reds. We can just mix up some fun colors here. Fall colors, reds, golds, a little bit of brown mixed in here. We're going to have some blue and purples. Maybe over here we'll take some blue and purple. Make ourselves a little bit of a palette of colors for ourselves, color choices that we have for our painting. So if I just mix them up over here first, this is how I do it. I just basically mix my colors out on my palette, what I'm thinking I'm going to use. And once I have those colors set, that's it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's going to be all set and ready to go for the painting. I'll use the same colors we used in the start of the painting. And I didn't add anything, maybe a little bit of the cooler colors, a little bit of the purple and blue. We already had blue here, though, so we're fine. We're going to take these colors now and work these into the painting. So what I'll do is I'll take so this is going to be some darker green for the trees. We can paint through the figures because the figures are going to be darker, so don't worry about it. You can paint right over the figures. Okay, so you have some green there to start with. And I'll try to paint right along the street, the line of the street, like this. This takes practice. Don't worry about it. You can always put a piece of tape across. You can always come across here, put a piece of tape along your street. You can always do that. If you want to keep a straight line and you're maybe a little nervous, you can't keep a straight line with your brush, especially when you're working high up on your brush like this. I've practiced this a lot, so that's why my hand's a little steadier when I'm painting like this. But if you're just trying this for the first time, or you're just trying it out and practicing it, don't be afraid at all to just take some tape and get yourself a nice straight line like this. And it doesn't matter if it leaks under there a little bit, not a big deal. We're going to be painting over the darker street level soon. Now we're going to come in and get some of the fall colors over the greens, top of the greens. Now we're infusing all these beautiful autumn colors right into the greens, over the top of the greens. We're dancing the brush around, holding the brush up high like this, and just getting on some really nice colors like this. And you can go straight in and get some golds in there, some reds. You create some beautiful colors, some blue and purple for some of the shadows down below on the lower section here where there's more shadows. The shadows are down below the bottoms of the trees, like that. Like this. And then you have it. You have all the trees along, beautiful looking trees along the sidewalks in the plaza here that we have. We can go in and maybe get a touch of brown with this blue. So we have kind of a grayish, and we'll try to get our clock tower here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. You can do this with a smaller brush as well if you want to. I'll make the shadow over here on this side. If you go over a spot that's, you know, you can always take a paper towel or a tissue and you just fold it up like this into a point, and you can just press down on that like that, and you can lift up a little bit of paint. A couple of splashes with the brush. Tap on the brush a little bit like this, tap like that, and we have it. Then what we'll do is we'll lift this up carefully, and we're going to take this purple and we're going to get that right through here. Now what that does for us though is when we tape that off a little bit, it kept a lot it kept the paint from flowing down too much, which is really good. That's what we want to do. You want to kind of keep these fall colors up here, kind of up in the top section here where the trees are. And then again, you could take a paper towel. A lot of times I'll take a paper towel. I'll tear, so I have maybe just a square of paper towel, and then you can fold it a few times like this. And then you can crease it across like this. And you make like fold it up a few different times. A little bit easier to work with if you fold it over a number of times and get it to a smaller, something like this. And then you can even just go across the painting and just lift up some of that puddling of paint that you have, just like this, like that. And then what we can do is lift up a little bit of paint if we want, down here. And that's going to be good. It's going to lift up a little bit of paint. We'll go over, once it dries, we're going to go over with more of a purplish, purple and brown I think is going to look really good for some kind of like that street feeling. But we're going to let this dry. So that's what we have to do now. We just have to take a few minutes to let this bottom section dry. But while we're doing that, we can actually come in. We'll take our pointy detail brush that we had here, that we started with, and we can just do a few details here. So we'll do maybe we'll do that like this. We'll put a couple of shadows under there where the buildings are, some windows on the building, and we talked about I dry off my brush a little bit, rinse off my brush, dry off my brush. A little bit of blue, purple, a little bit of red. I'll just do a little bit of a darker shadow under here where the buildings are, the windows in the buildings, like this. And then again, I talked about it before. Yes, we can go in and get our building in like this. Okay. And a little bit of detail maybe on the clock tower. We have a couple of ornamentation of some of the features. Then we can certainly go in and do a couple of fancier ornaments on top here. So now we're going back to the, again, like I said before when we first started, even though you're painting in a very loose style here, toward the end of the painting now, we're going to go back to that more stable, secure style where you're going to maybe brace your hand and get a couple of the details. Like we're going to do the weather vane up here on the top of the clock tower. Okay, so, you know, mix and match our styles is fine. I do that all the time. Okay, and now let's work in some figures. Maybe the first figure, we will go back to our, we'll use this brush again. So we use this brush here, and we're gonna get that, the head and shoulders of that first figure here. And that's a gentleman, he's walking, he's got a suit on here. It's probably like a nice city scene here. We're using black, some blue, some red, some interesting colors here. Darks though, right? We're using lots of dark paint. He's got a dark suit on here. Like that. Okay. And then we can just certainly move right along here. Maybe we're going to try some different... This feels a little bit damp, so I think I'm going to take a break now. I'm going to let everything dry now. We're fine getting this first figure in here like this because it's quite dark. There's a lot of paint on there. Can you see how much dark, rich paint I put on here? That's fine. But when you have damp paper like this and you want to go with some different colors, like maybe lighter colors like orange or red or blue, it's a little bit more difficult. That's why we say we let the paper dry, and we're going to be a lot better off. So that's what we'll do. We'll let this dry for about half an hour, or if you want to blow dry it, 5 minutes, and we can get back to work. So I'm going to blow dry it for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get the video started again. All right, so we're now completed with the blow drying process. Everything is nice and dry. Let's get in and do some more. I think we're going to go with some red maybe for our next figure over here. So maybe our next figure here is going to have a red top like this, and then maybe we'll go with a darker like that, and then maybe a blue. Like that. Our next figure over here, maybe we're going to go with we'll probably go with a darker color, I think, here. For these next two figures over here, again, they're kind of blurry. They're not too in focus or sharp focus, so we'll just go with some, just like that, just a couple of indications and a little bit of shadowing underneath our figures here to this side over here, like that. And that should be fine. Then after we do that, we can do a couple of highlights, and I think we'll be fine. So when I do highlights for my figures, especially in a scene like this, actually what I'll do before I do that is let me just do one more thing here. I just wanted to get a little bit more interesting leaf forms up top here. So some greens. And again, I'll hold my brush, and I'll use the smaller brush here. And I'll just do some of this. Just some of that nice circular, to get some of these more finer leaf forms on the foliage here. You can fill in some of the white spots if you want to. In the watercolor paper, if you find that you don't like some of the white paper showing through, or the lighter bits of paper, sometimes that will happen when you're painting. You can always go in and fill them in a little bit, keep them a little bit more subdued. And then, of course, we have a little bit of shadowing over here. We can do some shadowing there. Maybe a little bit of a darker shadow on this side over here, like that. And maybe a little bit of shadowing under here, like this. So we have some interesting shadowing there. And like that. We could certainly take a little bit of the orangey kind of colors and splash on there like this. Sometimes with splashes you might have to lift up a little bit if you oversplash. But you can dab too. Dab finger paint a little bit like this. And then maybe sometimes you'll think to yourself, maybe it's going to look better if you kind of connect some of these together so that everything doesn't look sort of like spotty. So sometimes it looks better if you can connect up a few things together here, like over here. These, connect those up a little bit. Like this. Like that. That looks better. Okay. And of course we'll add in some orange and red fall colors into that. A little bit of yellow. A little bit of purple. Some shadowing there in the trees, foliage. All right. And then our final bit of highlights, we can use some sunlight. We just rinse our brush off in clean water. And then we take our white, titanium white, and we just go in and pick up some of the gold color, maybe some yellow and orange like this. And just take that yellow and orange and put it into the paint at the very, very top of the paint tube, like that. So that the top bit of paint in our tube is kind of got a little bit of yellow and gold in there to keep the white from just being kind of stark white, like plain white with no tint of color. And then when we do that, we're just going to do a couple of very, very light highlights. You just take a little dab of the white paint from the tube like this, and we just do a couple. We'll do a couple of highlights on the tops of the figures like this. Like that. And that's a complete painting. Fun composition, and it really teaches us about painting loose. So we talked about that. We want to keep that in mind, and we'll peel up the tape here, and you see how, again, putting a border around your paintings really just it creates a very exciting look, like a very exciting composition. Even though we're just doing compositions and we're not necessarily creating a finished painting, if you put your tape around any of your compositions, any of your practice work, and especially if you're doing finish work, you always want to tape it. And this is how you get that really good looking border around your painting like this. That just looks so awesome. And then we'll put up at the top, we'll just put our loose style like that. And you can kind of see how we've gone through all three of our styles, starting out with our tight style first. working into a semi-loose style like this. And then finally we're doing our very loose style like this, where we're using large brush strokes, lots of paint, lots of water, and we're using a larger brush, a mop brush, like I was saying before earlier. Your brushes a lot of times are kind of like an indication of your style. So people that are going to be using mop brushes, you'll notice professional artists that use mop brushes, they're maybe doing more looser paintings. People that are working with maybe round brushes like we started with, more detailed style paintings, maybe more tight, you're going to see smaller brushes and more like round brushes like this. So we always keep that in mind as watercolor artists, that our brushes also will help us to achieve whatever style we're looking to paint in. So we're going to see you on the next video. I'm so happy you came along here and worked with us for the last hour or so. And always remember, subscribe on the right-hand side below. This way you don't miss a thing. You're at the right place at the right time here on my channel. You'll learn a ton about watercolors. We do everything watercolor here. And also, I wanted to mention that besides doing exercises like this, we do finished paintings all the time on my channel. So we're going to be doing flower paintings, beach scenes. We're going to do more city scenes, streetscapes, landscape paintings. We're going to do a little bit of portrait and figure work once in a while for people that like to try that out once in a while on my channel. So everything here, watercolor. Let's have a fun time together. And again, we'll see you very, very, very soon.